Hello there, welcome back to World of Warship Legends with Durka. Legendary tier ships currently mostly reside in the Bureau and can be researched, but as we all know, it can be rather time consuming. Knowing which legendary ship you wanted next could be a big decision and save you a lot of time. Alternatively, it could cost a lot of global XP. Today I have broken down all of the current statistics of each legendary battleship, as well as player evidence and my own experience to help you decide which legendary battleship you should research next. The battleships all have their own unique playstyle and setup, and your preference could differ whether or not you like sniping, brawling, or something in between. But aside from that, let's get right to it. To separate these behemoths, we are going to compare survivability, main gun performance, maneuverability, and concealment, and that will be our main categories with a few subpoints to see which one is the best. For fairness, I am keeping the specific builds I use for each one of these ships. They are set up mostly in their most common sense form, but let's go ahead and look at the builds, so if there are any discrepancies, it's all out in the open. For Montana, we have Billy Sims. Main battery mod, prop mod, target acquisition, and artillery plotting room. Now, Azerlane, Scharnhorst, and Cunningham are going to make an appearance on all of these battleships, as I really enjoy having good accuracy. Moving on. Yamato. Azerlane Fuso, pretty much the same as Takagi. In fact, Takagi might be a little bit better. Aiming systems mod 1, prop, concealment mod, main battery mod 3. Conqueror. We are using Azerlane Nelson. If you are doing a build and you do not have the Azerlane Commander, I would go with Cunningham. The accuracy will troll you. Aiming systems, propulsion mod, concealment, main battery mod 3. And finally, the Grosser Kurfurst. We're using Azerlane Scharnhorst, who is nearly identical to Ciliax. Aiming systems mod 1, prop, target acquisition, main battery mod 3, and we are using the 420mm guns. Survivability. Off of the above setups, Grosser Kurfurst will have the biggest HP pool, followed up by the Yamato with a near tie with Montana, and finally the Conqueror. Heals. Montana gets 3 base heals, the other battleships get 2. In this category, there is no comparison. Conqueror has heals that recover 25,780 damage. The other ships kind of hover around 13 to 14,000. Torpedo protection. Yamato is the best in class, 55%. Montana's is 42%, Conqueror 28%, and the Grosser Kurfurst 25%. Now the armor, and this is probably where it really counts in having a battleship. Now, we could go through and compare each individual section of armor, and believe me, I looked at these armor viewers a lot and did a lot of comparing, but to not get too in-depth and to not make this video 20 minutes long, let's kind of cut to the chase. In terms of sheer armor, the Grosser Kurfurst will be the tankiest. This is due to its small citadel and the good protection that it has for that. It edges out the other nations with a good strip of 60 to 120mm armor on the already 32mm bow. After carefully looking through the armor schemes, I would place Montana in second place. As the armor is concerned, it has a very thick belt, great citadel, and a thwartship protection. The citadel is noticeably larger than Grosser Kurfurst, and it also has the worst deck armor rating, so that would be an issue and something to keep an eye on. Followed up, the Yamato and the Conqueror. I would kind of almost tie them for last place, and here is why. Yamato has an above-the-water citadel that is huge. It's very easy to access, as we all know. Worth pointing out as well, yes, it has a 32mm bow, like the other battleships, but compared to the other nations, this bow section wraps nearly a third of the ship before the belt armor starts. So this front cheek section, as it's kind of called, should absolutely be your aiming point when targeting her from the front. And Conqueror. She has very little citadel protection past her outside armor. Up close, the Grosser Kurfurst is definitely going to be the tankiest. Again, great citadel protection, as well as the smallest and hardest to access citadel, and turtleback armor. For those curious, turtleback armor is essentially this slanted portion at the bottom of the deck armor, and in theory should help prevent shells from entering the citadel. As they entered through the side armor, they should ricochet up instead of flying into the vital portions of the ship. So that's a characteristic of German battleships, and also some other battleships in the game, such as Yamato. The GK. It's the tankiest in terms of armor and citadel protection. It has the biggest initial health pool, and while it does have the lowest torpedo reduction, it has an asset in the form of sonar that can help in this area. More on that sonar later. Montana has good armor and an additional heal over the other three nations. Conqueror's heals make up for the low HP pool, no doubt, and with a high-level master mechanic, it can be very hard to take this ship down. However, this requires it be played at range where you can heal over time and not focused. The Yamato. I would put it in last place simply because of its exposed citadel. I would call it the squishiest, considering most players typically play bow in, where it is easy to expose her weakness. Yamato can be tanky when played correctly, but sadly, it is usually not. Okay, the guns are next. For starters, let's cover damage per minute. This is how much theoretical damage your ship could do without ricochets, shatters, or anything like that, and shooting for a minute. Now this chart's going to look kind of busy, but let's look closely and see what's going on here. For comparison, we figured Conqueror in with a normal commander as well, not Azurlane Nelson, because Azurlane Nelson gets a perk called Big 7, and this is going to buff shell damage of AP and HE by quite a bit, so we have both on here for fairness. Also, in addition, you remember Montana was the only battleship that I was not using main battery mod 3 on. By having it on there, it cuts reload a lot. So for this comparison, we threw it on there to keep things fair. The results: Conqueror with either commander still comes out on top, followed by the German battleship. Interestingly, you can get Montana to come in nearly second place for AP shell damage by adding main battery mod 3. It brings that reload down to just under 28 seconds. Conqueror handedly takes the category. AP shell penetration would be the next thing that we want to see, and here is a chart from wowsfittingtool.com. It takes information from the PC version of the game, and it all translates to Legends. Yamato, to no surprise, is the best here with 460mm guns. It wins by a good margin. Next, the Grosser Kurfurst and her German shells, followed by the Conqueror, who starts to edge the GK out at longer ranges. And finally, the Montana, which shouldn't really be a surprise, I suppose, with the smallest guns in this category. Secondary should be added to the comparison, however, I see their contribution to battleship play as not nearly as important as the other categories. My opinion, you are entitled to your own as well. It would of course be no surprise that Grosser Kurfurst wins this category. On this build, we are using secondary battery mod on here, and they reach 8.4 kilometers. Yamato and Conqueror each reach 5.2, and Montana is 5 kilometers flat. Anti-aircraft is a category that is actually quite useful, I would say, for such big, slow, lumbering ships. The Montana and the Grosser Kurfurst both have an AA rating of 93, and then the Conqueror's is 88, the Yamato's 85. Overall gun performance. Yamato has the ability to overmatch anything and everything with the biggest and best AP shells currently in the game. The Conqueror, though, I probably would give this category to. It's a very close race, but Conqueror has the best DPM with both shell types, in addition to being the biggest winner in a category we didn't talk about, fire chance. 48% with each individual shell. Left unchecked, Conqueror has the greatest potential for dealing damage at legendary tier. Yamato's overmatch ability should not be ignored, so I have her in a firm second place here. Maneuverability. A. Speed is going to be led by Montana with a top speed of 30.9 knots, and Yamato is in last place here at 27 knots. We do not have gyrating drill bits on any of these commanders. Turning circle. Yamato's the best in class, 900 meters, and GK is the worst at 1050. Rudder shift wise, the Conqueror is the best and Montana the worst. 23.2 second rudder from Montana. This is very, very bad. The Conqueror having the second best top speed, second best turning circle, and the overall best rudder shift. I'm going to call it the most maneuverable battleship in this comparison. Finally, Concealment. Yamato and Conqueror both have an unfair advantage with a special module in slot 3 that reduces detection by 10%. This is a fantastic module, and it gives these two ships a big leg up over the Montana and the Grosser Kurfurst. Concealment for a battleship is often overlooked, but it can bring big advantages. Not being spotted first at the start of a match, which means you're not going to get focused by a lot of the team. Being able to stop shooting and go unspotted. And being unspotted to turn out and to reposition at other points of the map. So I would always use this module if you have access to it, at least in battleships. Conqueror wins here. 13.4 kilometer detection, and the GK is in last place at 15.6 kilometers. Well, these are the cold hard statistics as well as I can report it. Some of it, I mean, you have to be a little subjective in looking at some of the categories, but anyways, the next part is definitely my opinion, so keep that in mind. Also, these battleships are all very different, and they're better at certain things. That's how the game was designed. Sometimes heads-up comparisons like this don't really work out perfectly. Overall, the best battleship at Legendary tier, I'm gonna give it to the Yamato. It has a good degree of survivability in conjunction with its ability to deal damage consistently and effectively. Conqueror, in my eyes, is a very, very close second. Sure, it is more squishy, but it has a ship printer on board. With 4 of those heals, it means you have an amazing ability to stay alive, and your dealing damage is second to none. Not only with the AP shells, but in a fire starting ability, and the HE shells have huge alpha damage, so even if someone's bow tanking you or you're in a bad position, you can consistently deal damage in that ship. The Montana and the Grosser Kurfurst, I think, are tied jointly for last place. They are very similar ships. They have very similar broadsides and guns, similar survivability, and the like. The categories that Montana would win in, it doesn't really win by a huge margin, and vice versa. On that note though, GK has a fantastic sonar that extends to 6 kilometers and lasts 60 seconds. That is an excellent tool to have as a battleship. And of course, it also has the secondaries where there might be a little bit of a fun factor coming in. The Montana really only has a clear edge in accuracy, not only with a higher sigma value, but with artillery plotting room in mod slot 4. I'm not going to declare a winner or one of these being better than the other. I think Montana's better at longer range combat, whereas the German ship could be more effective up close, but I think that one's largely up to what playstyle you like. New players, you are going to have the easiest time playing Yamato. To me, this ship is nearly foolproof to do well in, considering you have a decent support team, and assuming you understand your weaknesses and how to manage a battleship. While I really enjoy Conqueror and her amazing ability to deal damage, I would still choose Yamato as being, I guess, my favorite Legendary tier battleship. If anything, only for the gun sounds. I kid. It's definitely my most consistent ship, and I see it as very easy to do well in. Overall, that's a wrap up of the Legendary tier battleships. I am curious what each of you think about the current ships here at Legendary tier and how they rate against each other. Leave a comment down below and tell me what you think. With that, guys, I would appreciate if you hit that thumbs up and sub to the channel so you do not miss any future videos. Catch you in the next one. See ya.